Welcome back, everyone, to Toulas Tips for Caregivers. My guests today are Joyce Cruz and John Hamill, and we're talking about that really special part of life, the end of life. And like John said, you can have some choices. You have lots of choices. It's all about you. There's autonomy for you at end of life. Joyce, I know you have a quote you wanted to read.
I do. I got it from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on death and dying, which is very, very excellent. Just learned a lot about myself in reading it. But the quote is, "The more we are making advancements in science, the more we seem to fear and deny the reality of death." And I just see that in our society and in people handling the situations with not only with their families and
Right.
their loved ones, that they even in care facilities,
People deny that the
Yes.
patient may be entering the
Yeah,
dying
yeah.
phase, or
So
maybe towards
they
the end of
don't
life.
recognize the stages,
Mhm.
and they don't care for them appropriately, or we don't, to what's happening actually in this process. And so for us to become educated about this would be not only helpful for us, but for everybody, I think, too.
Well, like John said, we are all going to exit this
Yeah,
world.
right.
And we can have choices in how we do that. The care can be all about us. And that's what I love about hospice care. Again, I work for community hospice, and there is no cookie cutter approach to hospice care, if you will. There's no standard. There's standards of care that we adhere to, and they're excellent standards of care that we adhere to, but there is not one single approach because every person's different, every family member, and their family dynamics are different. And so we have to care for the whole, we call it the whole unit, the patient and the family. And really and truly, there is nothing else in healthcare that cares for the family members alongside the patient.
That's right. That's what hospice does. That's what we found out in our family, is that when you make the transition from going from home to a nursing facility, now you're surrounded by staff and different shift workers and all of the things that come along with that journey.
Right.
And then after, when it comes time, and Joyce, you were so right, because my dad did not want to recognize the stages my mom was going through.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor talked to my little sister, who had the power of attorney, who was the bravest one in our family to take care of those decisions. My mom knew my dad and I were too close to those kind of things. So, but watching them go through that journey, and then of course when it was time to go to hospice, because mom did not want a feeding tube, she did not want to prolong what was inevitable. And for 7 days, the hospice crew, from walking into the facility, the warmth and the genuine hellos and holding the hands, to the calm atmosphere
Yes.
of not having machines beeping and lights blinking and all of those things. And they focused on us because mom was comfortable at this point.
Right.
And they started looking at us. They'd look at my dad. They would smile at my dad and just hello and grab his hand. It was unlike the nursing home staff who knew my dad and they saw him coming, and some of them turned and would go the other way because dad was just adamant about taking care of mom.
Well, good. I'm glad
As
he
he
was
should be.
outspoken.
And we
That's
did that as a
right.
family. My sister and my
Right.
dad. My dad was a grouchy old man who turned into a most beautiful, loving caregiver I've ever seen. Visited mom twice a day without fail.
Wow.
Wow.
Married 52 years. So,
Yeah.
but the journey going through that, and then of course the hospice situation.
The hospice staff and the care that they provide is truly so different than the staff not that the staff in nursing homes aren't compassionate and caring. Many
Of
times
course
they
they
are.
are.
They have
They
to
are,
be.
of
Well, they
course.
do to be just to be there. But they don't have the time or the expertise and the training in end of life care, and they don't have the time, honestly, to spend the time like we do.
No, and it's a
And
different part of the phase of the
It
journey.
is. It is.
It's a distinct phase of this journey.
Right, and the hospice professionals, they are experts in what's going to keep a patient comfortable and out of pain and free of nausea and vomiting and compassion and caring for the family.
The living part that is so precious at that moment, because you feel the family dynamics, and that really, if you think about it, at the end of the day, what do you have to surround you but the loved ones in your family?
That's exactly it. That's all you got.
And that's
left.
what they're experts at doing.
Caring. We have a caller on line 1. Bobby, welcome to Toulas Tips for Caregivers.
Well, if I may, thanks for calling in, Bobby. I don't know if we can give you the why, but I can point you to some resources. A part of our Yes. A part of our service is grief management. Everybody faces these situations differently, whether it's a sudden loss through a car accident or a heart attack, or a loved one has a terminal illness, and what do you say to someone who's dying? We have DVDs and brochures available at every one of our Heritage Giddens facilities. They are free for the asking. You can look at the DVD and it'll help you to understand the situation. It might give you some comfort and some words to say to that individual, and it might offer some help and support. That's one thing that we do. There are other areas out there, and there are church groups that can pray and help surround you with that, but finding resources of what to say, that's a tough situation.
Yeah.
When someone is dying and diagnosed with a terminal illness,
Bobby,
especially so young.
Especially very young. Bobby, are you availing yourselves of community hospice care for these folks, these young women?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. What do you do for yourself to relieve that burden in your heart? What do you do?
Mm-hmm. 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 I think that speaks to memorialization, Bobby. Mm-hmm. Memorialization, and you're in this business of caregivers with the rest of us, it is. Well, people ask me, John, how do you work in the funeral business? Isn't that difficult? And I say, well, God gave me the grace. You ought to see the hospice workers. Yeah. They're the ones who really have the tough job. And then they'll say, well, God gave us the grace. Look at the people in the emergency room. Whatever it is, that level. But
you're called to do it, and God will give you the grace and strength to do it. But He's the one you need to turn to get through it, and He will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And flowers remind me of those things, Bobby. In real life, flowers, they bloom. Yeah. They start from a seed and grow up, and new life reminds me that there is renewal.
Yeah.
And there is resources to regenerate.
Yeah.
And there is tomorrow.
Please stay in touch with community hospice for these folks.
And give a call at our Heritage Giddens. Get those DVDs if you want to.
But we have counselors, we have social workers, we have folks that will meet with the husbands of these dying women and counsel them through it. And we'll be there for them after. You know that, right? The bereavement care that's available.
Thanks for your call. We're coming up on a break, Bobby.
Let us do the break, Bobby, and hold on, okay? You're listening to Toulas Tips for Caregivers on Talk Radio 600 WBOB.